Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going deep on the rise of the Chinese economy. Like, how did it go from, being kind of closed off to becoming like this global powerhouse? And we're looking at this all through this book. It's called Took, which means like value in English, and it's by this guy Zhang Lei. He founded Hill House Capital.
Yeah, Hill House is like one of the biggest investment firms in China.
Huge.
Yeah.
So this book, it's not just like your typical business story,
Oh, right. It's really interesting, actually. It gives you like this inside look into how China's economy totally transformed over the past few decades.
Yeah, it became a bestseller over there right when it came out in 2020.
Huge bestseller. So it's clear people want to know, like, what are his secrets, right? What are the strategies that made him so successful?
Totally. So, okay, let's go back in time a little bit. It's 1970s. China is closed off from most of the world. Then bam, everything changes. What happened? What were the things that really kicked off this crazy transformation?
Well, it's a super complicated story, but one of the most important things was when China joined the WTO in 2001.
The World Trade Organization.
Right. It opened them up to so much international trade and investment. It was never at that scale before.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just opening up. It was like this fundamental change in their whole economic system, their model.
And this is what Zhang Lei calls the 3-in-1 development, right? Can you break that down for us?
Yeah, so think about how the West developed. They kind of went through these separate phases, right? First it was industrialization, then people started moving to cities, urbanization. Then much later you get all the big advances in technology. Each phase kind of builds on the one before, but over a really long time.
Yeah.
But China, they basically did all three at the same time.
At the same time.
It was they squeezed decades of development into just a few years.
So it's not even just growing fast. It's all these huge changes all linked together, happening so crazy fast.
Exactly. And Zhang Lei says this 3-in-1 thing, it made this unique situation where opportunities were just popping up left and right.
So that kind of brings us to tech, right? All the internet companies that blew up. Zhang Lei seems really interested in how that compares to the dot-com boom in the US.
Yeah, he sees a lot of parallels, but also some pretty big differences. In China, all that venture capital money didn't just help with cool new tech, it reshaped whole industries. Think about Tencent.
Yeah, Tencent.
They started with just a messaging app, QQ, but then they just exploded into this huge ecosystem with WeChat at the center.
Yeah.
Now they're involved in everything in China. Social media, payments, games, you name it, they're in it.
It's kind of wild how huge companies like Tencent got and how fast it happened. But Zhang Lei didn't just jump on board with these big tech giants, right? He seems really good at spotting potential really early on.
Oh, yeah. He invested in Tencent way back when it was just a tiny startup. And that wasn't just luck. It was a calculated bet based on what he saw happening in the Chinese market. He saw how tech could totally transform these old industries and how it could connect people in completely new ways.
So it's not just tech for the sake of tech. It's about understanding how it can create value in a society that's changing super fast.
Exactly. And this is where we get to another one of his big ideas, the new economy.
Okay, so let's dive into that. What does he even mean by new economy? And what are the opportunities he sees there?
He's basically looking beyond those traditional things that made China's economy grow, like manufacturing and exports. He's betting on stuff like healthcare, consumer goods, advanced manufacturing, areas where innovation is key, and that cater to this massive growing middle class.
So he's trying to figure out where the next wave of growth is coming from and getting in on the action early.
Exactly. And he sees these new economy sectors as the key to China's future growth and how they'll compete globally.
That's super interesting. But can you give us some specific examples? What kind of companies represent this new economy approach that Zhang Lei looks for?
One that comes to mind right away is JD.com. It's this huge e-commerce platform. And they went all in on building their own delivery network so they could promise super fast, reliable shipping. That focus on customer experience and making sure their infrastructure was rock solid really set them apart.
It's fascinating, right? They're not just copying what works in the West. They're adapting and coming up with completely new business models that work specifically for China.
Yeah, and that's a key takeaway from Zhang Lei's perspective. If you want to understand China's economic rise, you got to understand their market and how Chinese companies are using technology to create value in ways that are totally new.
So they're not just following the leader. they're innovating, especially in these new economy sectors.
Right. And it's not even just about the tech itself. It's about the strategy, the vision behind it. It's about thinking long term and being willing to invest in the future.
And that's a perfect lead-in to another big theme from the book, the human element. Zhang Lai doesn't just talk about technology and markets. He talks about talent, culture, and thinking long-term.
He's all about building institutions that last, not just companies that make a quick buck. And that means investing in people, creating a culture of learning and always improving, and giving employees the power to think creatively and take ownership.
So it's not just about having a cool product or service. It's about having a strong foundation, a culture that can keep you successful for the long haul.
Exactly. And he doesn't just talk about it, he lives it. Hill House Capital, his own firm, has this really intentional culture. They're all about research, collaboration, and understanding long-term trends.
So he practices what he preaches. It's
Yeah.
about applying those same principles of long-term thinking and investing in people to his own team.
For sure. That's something that sets him apart from a lot of other investors who are just chasing the next big thing.
Okay, so we've covered a lot already. The 3-in-1 development, the role of tech, the rise of the new economy, and building strong company cultures. It's a lot to think about.
It is, but it all feeds into this bigger story about how China's economy changed and the strategies that made them successful. And it's clear that what Zhang Lai is saying isn't just for investors, it's for anyone trying to understand what's shaping the global economy today.
And there's so much more to uncover. We're going to dig deeper into these insights and see how some of Zhang Lai's investments really show his approach to creating value. Stick with us. So before we went to that break, we were talking about how Zhang Lai is all about the new economy and how those newer sectors are like key for China to keep growing. But he also seems to get that older industries, they can change too, reinvent themselves. He calls it like upgrading traditional industries. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, it's a cool idea. Like he says these sectors, manufacturing, retail, they're not like going extinct just because of technology. It's more like they have this potential to transform, but they just haven't really embraced all the possibilities of digital tools and new ways of thinking.
It's like they have this hidden potential just waiting to be unlocked, like a bridge between the old and the new.
Exactly. And he's not just talking about it, he's putting his money where his mouth is, with some pretty interesting investments. Like one that comes to mind is Medea Group. They make electric appliances in China.
Okay, so Medea was already a successful company. What was it about them that Zhang Lai saw?
They were already a leader, but they knew they needed to change with the times. So with the support of Hill House Capital, they went through this big digital transformation. They started using data to make their manufacturing better, to improve the customer experience, to basically be more adaptable and responsive.
So they didn't scrap the old way of doing things. They used technology to make it better, make it work in the digital age.
Right. It shows how technology can help traditional businesses compete in a world that's changing so fast.
That makes a lot of sense. And it brings us back to the new economy sectors that Zhang Lai is so excited about. We talked about healthcare and consumer goods, but what about advanced manufacturing? What does he see happening there?
Well, China has been called like the world's factory forever, but Zhang Lai knows that the future of manufacturing isn't just about cheap labor. It's about innovation, automation, and moving up to making higher value things.
So it's like making more complex products, using cutting-edge technology, and competing on quality and efficiency, not just on being the cheapest.
Exactly. And he's investing in companies that are leading the way. Like CATL, they make electric vehicle batteries.
Oh, wow, that's a great example. Everyone's moving towards electric cars, and companies like CAPL are in a great position to be a big part of that change.
Right. And Zhang Lai's investment in CATL shows that he understands these big global trends. He knows how to find the companies that are going to benefit from them.
So we've talked about a lot of the specific companies Zhang Lai has invested in, but I'm kind of curious about his overall philosophy. Like, what are the big ideas that guide his decisions?
Well, one thing that really stands out is that he's all about long-term value. It's not about making a quick profit. It's about finding companies that are building something that's going to last. Companies that are solving real problems and have a real edge over their competition.
So it's like seeing past all the hype and the trends and focusing on what makes a business successful in the long run, the fundamentals.
Exactly. And he also really emphasizes understanding the why of a business, not just the what. Like, what are their motivations, their vision, what drives them?
So it's not just about the numbers, it's about the people, the culture, the story of the company.
Right. And he thinks that when you understand the why, you can see better whether a business has what it takes to succeed in the long term.
That makes sense. It seems like Zhang Lei isn't just looking at spreadsheets. He's really thinking deeply, trying to understand the bigger picture, the cultural and societal things that are shaping the business world.
Absolutely. And that's what makes his perspective so valuable. He doesn't just look at China's economy in isolation. He's trying to understand how it fits into the global picture, what it means for the future of business overall.
That's a really interesting idea. We should definitely unpack that more. We'll look at what Zhang Lei's insights tell us about the global economy and what opportunities and challenges might be coming up. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been talking all about Zhang Lei's take on China's economic rise, his whole investment philosophy. But now I'm curious, what does all this mean for the rest of the world?
Yeah, that's the big question, right? And Zhang Lei doesn't shy away from that. He really sees China becoming this major force on the world stage. But not necessarily in a bad way, not like a threat or anything.
So it's not about China against everyone else. It's more about how China's growth changes the whole global economic game.
Right. He thinks China doing well is going to create opportunities for other countries too, especially if they're willing to work together and kind of adapt to this new reality. He talks a lot about win-win situations where Chinese companies and investors can team up with people from other countries to, come up with solutions that benefit everyone.
That makes sense. It's not about one country calling all the shots. It's about working together to make things better and solve problems we all share. But let's be real, some people are definitely worried about China getting more powerful, right? What about competition, intellectual property, maybe even conflict?
Oh yeah, he gets that. He knows that China's rise has made some people nervous. But he says China is changing, becoming more part of the global system, more aware of its responsibilities.
So we should look past all the headlines and the stereotypes and really try to have a more, balanced conversation about China's role in the world.
Totally. And he's convinced that talking to each other, understanding each other, that's the most important thing for navigating all the complications of this new globalized world.
That's so true. It's easy to get caught up in fear or just simplistic stories, but it's way more complicated than that. And I think that's one of the big things Zhang Lei's book does. It makes you think critically, question your assumptions, and really have thoughtful discussions about the things that are shaping our world.
Absolutely. His book is like a call to action, not just for investors, but for anyone who wants to understand this crazy world we live in and do well in it. It's about always learning, being able to adapt, and being willing to look beyond our own little bubbles to find solutions and opportunities.
Okay, so we've covered a ton in this deep dive into Zhang Lei's value. We've explored his take on China's economic rise, his investment philosophy, and how he sees China impacting the global scene. But if our listeners could only take away one thing from all this, what would you want it to be?
That's a tough one. But I'd say this. Value, it's not set in stone, It changes. It's not just what something is worth today, it's what it could be worth in the future. And in a world that's changing so fast, being able to spot and create value is more important than ever.
That's such a good point. It's not about holding on to the past. It's about being ready for the future, knowing that change is constant, and the real opportunity is in being able to adapt and innovate.
Exactly. It's about having a vision, taking risks, and always looking for new ways to create value, not just for ourselves, but for everyone.
And on that note, we're going to wrap up our deep dive into Zhang Lei's value. We hope you've enjoyed exploring China's economic transformation and the insights of this really influential investor. Thanks for listening.